notice, and this is the typical copyright. We continue with mathematics syllabus for CSEC 2018 to 2027. Schedule of videos. Section 1, number theory and computation. Right now, I am working on these 12 videos. After that, we will look at sets in November 2024, and then December 2024, measurement, January 2025, statistics, February 2025, algebra, March 2025, relations, functions, and graphs, April 2025, geometry and trigonometry, and finally, May 2025, by mid-May 2025, vectors and matrices. Just a reminder that I have divided section 1 in 33 videos, and they are all published on YouTube in their entirety. This section, that is section 1, forms the foundation on which the rest of the syllabus is based. So please make sure you look at these 33 videos and you know them very well from section 1 if you intend to continue with the mathematics syllabus. This is now section 2. I have completed and published most of these videos. The last one I did was on mortgages. So all of those 8 videos, well, actually 9, because this one here was divided into 2 videos. So that would make it 9 videos from this section published on YouTube. This next one here, measures and money, I have a little to say about that, but this particular video takes us to this point, video 10, where we will be dealing with utilities, salaries, and wages. Bear in mind that all videos from section 1 and 2 will be available on YouTube in their entirety. Subsequent videos from section 3 and so on, only a few of those will be made available in their entirety. Now, this objective here, where it says measures and money, it seems redundant since we already cover that in other parts of the syllabus. And in the next slide, I'll say something more about that. So, this objective here and the explanatory note has to do with currency conversion. When we looked at objective 8 from section 1, objective 8 from section 1, we covered that in detail when we were dealing with the metric system, conversion in the metric system, and especially conversion using conversion scale, including currency. Besides, quite a lot of the math you have done so far and will continue to do for the rest of the course involves measures and money. So I think this objective we have here, objective 9, is redundant, and therefore I will not do any additional video on this objective. We are now here, objective 10, which is the last objective in this section, but I have divided it into 3 videos, as I said before. At this particular point in this video, we will be dealing with utilities and salaries and wages. So what does the term utilities mean? Utilities are the essential services that play a vital role in economic and social development. The 3 most common ones are water, electricity, and gas in some countries where the gas is piped to your home like how you have water piped to your home. Now, they are generally operated by statutory bodies created by governments to meet the needs of the people. Note, this definition is not required by CSEC. It is here so that you know what this part of the objective is all about. Now, the charges are listed in a table, and the different charges apply to various categories of users. We will consider one such table in the next slide. So let's deal with water first. Here is a table that shows the charges to various category of users. Notice over here you have domestic charges, then you have commercial charges, you have environmental fees, domestic and commercial, whether the commercial is small, medium, and large. You also have some basic charges that apply to everybody, except it may be slightly different. For domestic, the basic charge is $14, and for commercial, the basic charge is $25. So we have different charges for different categories of users. And some of these charges are applicable to everybody. So our general approach is we will consider all general charges, and then we will also add the applicable charges to specific categories of users. So let's look at one example of a bill here for domestic category. Billing period from particular date to particular date. This is the previous reading. This is the current reading. The gallons of water consumed or used will obviously be the previous reading minus the current reading, which gives us this. And based on the rate applicable to this category of user and the amount used, the charge for the water used is $25.95. That's the consumption charge. Then there is a basic water charge of $14 and an environmental fee that is tied to the water bill, $11. You add all of those and you find that the payment due on this bill is $50.95. So we will go through one or two of those and work them out so you can understand what is going on. In an actual exam, you wouldn't have to work out every single thing that we are working out here, but at least if you understand the principle here and you are asked to do one or two things, you can easily do those. So here is that schedule again, charges for different categories of users. Example 1, domestic. So let's look at this situation, which is very similar to the one we just looked at. You have the billing period, this, which doesn't concern us right now. You have the meter reading, which does concern us, previous and current. So if this is the previous reading and this is the current reading, you would expect the current reading to be higher because you have used some water since that previous reading. So what you will do, you will subtract the previous reading from the current reading to get this consumption for this billing period. So 2,460 gallons. Now this is domestic category. 2,460, that is less than 2,500 over here. So that will be charged at a rate of $0.0065 per gallon. This is per gallon. So we will multiply this 2,460 by 0.0065 and we get $15.99. That's a water charge. So the consumption charge, that charge is transferred down here. That is the consumption charge. There is a basic water charge. Basic water charge for domestic use is $14. So we add that $14 here. Environmental fee. Environmental fee for domestic use is $11. So $11. So the current charge would be those three things there added, which gives us $40.99. If you owe from the last time, they will add that here. Or if you pay extra money the last time, that will also show up at this point. Evidently, there is no arrears brought forward, and the total payment now due is $40.99. Okay, if you understand that, that is the basic principle we will use for utilities, whether it is water or electricity. And we wouldn't go through the gas because it follows the same principle as either one of this. We wouldn't deal with the gas, like gas pipe to your home. There are not many homes where we live in this area that actually have gas pipe to their home. What they do, they buy cylinders of gas to use. And if there are one or two countries that do have gas, it will operate on the same principle as these two. Same principle. So let's look at another example. Small commercial, example 2. You have the billing period here. Previous meter reading, current meter reading, consumption. So let's deal with that first. If this is your current reading, and that is the previous one, you just subtract the previous one from the current one to get the gallons used, the consumption, which is 22,460. Now this is small commercial. What is the charge for that? This is not domestic. So we come to commercial over here, small, and we find that it is $15 per 1,000 gallon, not per gallon. So $15 per 1,000. So what you need to do is divide this 22,460 by 1,000 and then multiply by $15, and that would give this company $336.90 for consumption charge, which is transferred down here. Now, basic water charge, basic charge up here. Now, this is commercial, so we need to go here, which is $25. And then environmental fee, commercial, and it is small, so small, commercial, $25. You add all of those, and the current charge would be $386.90. $90 brought forward as arrears. So the last time this company paid, they owed $90. So now that $90 will be added in to this, and the total payment now due is $476.90. That was example 2, small commercial for water. Now we're still on water. Example 3, this is now large commercial. And by the way, in case you are wondering about ship charges, ships normally need water, fresh water. Their charge would be $40 per 1,000 gallon, but we're not concerning ourselves with that here. All right, so let's deal with this question. So here is the billing period. This is the previous reading. This is the current reading. Gallons consumed, you would subtract the previous reading from the current reading. And if we do that, we get 122,460 gallons. Now, this is large commercial. So, commercial buildings charge large is $22 per 1,000 gallon. So we will divide this by 1,000, which would give us 122.460. We multiply that by this 22 here, and we get this charge, consumption charge, which comes down here. Basic water charge, commercial, $25. Environmental fee for commercial large is $85. We add those three, and the current charge is $2,804.12. Arrears brought forward. In this case, it is a negative $468. Down here it says that brackets indicate credit amount. Now the thing about it, when I put that in bracket, the software I'm using actually changed it to negative, which means that is money, extra money you paid last time. So what will happen now? The program will add those two things, but of course if you add a negative, it will subtract it. So the total payment now due is $2,336.12. So if you find this video useful and interesting, please like and share. Like and share. You may also consider subscribing to this channel. After all, it doesn't cost you anything, and it means a lot to me. Now we are still on utilities, but now we will deal with electricity. So part of your electricity bill would have this schedule here explaining how the electricity company charges. Again, domestic, commercial, industrial, and there is also something about street lighting. Remember, towns and so on may have to pay the electricity company for the electricity they use for street lighting. Now, this is not quite clear to the corner here, so I'll type it over and show you what it is. So this is clearer. For domestic, usage kilowatt hour, up to 50 kilowatt hour. Now, this is cents per kilowatt hour, and over 50 cents per kilowatt hour. If you hardly use any electricity, domestic, you still have to pay $5. And then there is a matter of VAT if you use over 250 kilowatt hours energy. That's for domestic. This one here is commercial. Follows a similar pattern, except you pay VAT on all kilowatt hour used. Then industrial, somewhat similar pattern. Street lighting. There is something about fuel surcharge. We will look at that just now. It says down here, note, there is a surcharge per kilowatt hour used based on the current global fuel price. So this changes depending on what fuel is sold for on the open market. So it will change every month. So again, our general approach is to look at the general charges and then the specific charges applicable to that user. Now, this is what an e-bill looks like where I live. This is my current bill. The last bill, I actually paid 74 cents extra. So the balance brought forward is a negative 74 cents. That was for 2 months when the bill was $419.26, and I paid $420. So there was a few cents extra. I have removed the meter number and the date for security reasons. And down here you have energy charge. This is the amount of kilowatt hour used based on the schedule of charge. That amounts to $98 and so on. So this is the schedule of charges. This is now domestic. We are now dealing with electricity, not water. So type, domestic, current reading, this, previous reading, that. Notice this is in the reverse order of the water bill. And energy charge, units used, and so on. So if the current reading is this and the previous reading is that, you just subtract the previous reading from the current reading. And in this case, we get 48 units or 48 kilowatt hours used. Now, this is less than 50. 42, the rate applicable will be 42.50 cents. If you shift this point 2 places to the left, you will be able to carry it to dollars. So it is $0.4250 per kilowatt hour. Multiply that by the 48, and the bill energy charge is $20.40. VAT is paid when you use more than 250 kilowatt hour. So VAT here will be 0. Fuel surcharge, everybody pays fuel surcharge. So it is fuel surcharge, 54.77 cents per kilowatt hour. That works out to be $0.5477. So you multiply those two and you get the fuel surcharge. Any arrears? No arrears. And so the total due, just add those up, and this person is required to pay $46.69 for that month. That was domestic. So evidently this person is not using much electricity, only 48 kilowatt hours. Let's look at another example now. That's the schedule of charges. So we have, it is still domestic. This is the current reading. That was the previous reading. Units used, you subtract the previous reading from the current reading, and we get 348 kilowatt hours. The rate here now, this is 348. Now, if it's up to 50, this is the rate. If it's over 50 for domestic, this is the rate, that's 50 cents. And so if you carry that to dollar, you shift the decimal point 2 places to the left, and you get 0.500. Multiply these two, and you get the current charge, which is $174. That's the energy charge. The VAT, you pay VAT if you use more than 250 kilowatt hours. Well, this is 348. So subtract 250 from 348, and you are paying VAT on 98 kilowatt hours. That is at a rate of 16 cents or $0.16. Multiply these two, and you get $7.84 VAT. Fuel surcharge, you pay fuel surcharge, 54.77 cents or $0.5477 on all kilowatt hours used. So you multiply that by 348, and this is the fuel surcharge. Arrears, no arrears. Add these three, and the current bill is $372.44. That's domestic. Evidently a bigger house with more people and more equipment than the previous one we looked at that used only 48 kilowatt hours. Example 5, commercial. So we looked at two examples for domestic, one under 50, one over 50, and it included VAT. Now we are looking at an example for commercial. So I now you understand commercial, current reading, previous reading, subtract the previous reading from the current reading, and we get units used 102,848 kilowatt hours. All right, let's see where that falls here in the commercial category. 102,000, so it is here between 18 kilowatt hour and 150 kilowatt hour. So that will be 54 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, so let's put in the 54 cents there, $0.54 now, multiply those two, and that amounts to $55,537.92 energy charge. Now, VAT is paid for commercial on all kilowatt hour used. So no deduction of 250, all kilowatt hours. So what will happen is this will be multiplied by that 16 cents, and the VAT amounts to $8,886.07. Fuel surcharge would be that 54.77 cents or $0.5477 multiplied by all units used, which amounts to $56,329.85. So arrears, no arrears, you add these three charges and it comes up to $120,753.84 that company has to pay for that billing period, maybe a month. Normally, this arrears here, 00, is not written if you don't owe them any money or if they don't owe you any money. This is normally not shown. I just put that there so you could understand what is happening. We will do one last example for electricity as it relates to industrial uses, like some type of manufacturing firm. So again, we have the schedule of payments, but now we are dealing with industrial usage. So this is the current reading, that's the previous reading, it's industrial. Units used, subtract the previous reading from the current reading, and the units used is 302,848. Now the rate for industrial at that amount of usage, so if it's up to 150, it would be 42 cents. If it's between 150 and 200, 39.90 cents. And if it's over 200, which is where we are here, it would be 37.80 cents per kilowatt hour. You shift that point two places and you get dollars. So that would be $0.3780 per kilowatt hour. Multiply those two and it amounts to $114,476.54. That's for the energy charge. Now, VAT, industrial users pay VAT on all kilowatt hour at a rate of 16 cents. So $0.16 multiplied by that up there, and the VAT amounted to $18,316.25. Fuel surcharge, like everybody else, this is standard for everybody, except that domestic pay fuel surcharge over 250. Commercial and industrial pay fuel surcharge on all kilowatt hours used So $0.5477 multiply that by that, and this is the fuel surcharge. Arrears, no arrears. Add these three, and this company has to pay the electricity company $298,662.64 for this billing period, which generally is a month. Well, that should be enough on utilities. So let's deal with salaries and wages now. Now, salary is a fixed amount of money or compensation paid to an employee by an employer in return for work performed. Salary is commonly paid in fixed intervals, for example, monthly payments of 1/12 of the annual salary. Example, if an accountant salary is 60,000 a year, that will be divided by 12 to get the monthly salary. Wage, on the other hand, is payment of money for labor or services, usually according to a contract on an hourly basis or weekly basis or daily basis or piecework basis. Example, somebody may pay $200 every 2 weeks to someone for general yard work. Cut the grass, trim the trees, clean up the leaves and drains and so on. So there's a difference between salary and wage, but that doesn't concern us right now. This definition or these definitions are not required for CSEC math. It is just here so you know what this part of the objective is about. In both cases, there is usually a schedule showing what you earn and legal authorized deductions, if any. So let's begin with salary. An organization, let's call it XYZ company, has a schedule of salaries, allowances, and deductions as shown in the table below. So this is the table below. You may not be able to see that clearly. So let's look at it a little clearer in the next slide. So you have a section here on earnings, your monthly salary, basic, which is the maximum you can earn, is this amount. Then you have an allowance on the salary, which is 25%. And you may also have a cost of living allowance, COLA, on the salary, which is 9%. So we can tabulate that and find the gross salary for the month and then the annual salary, because we need that to calculate the tax. P.A.Y.E, which is pay as you earn. And we have a government schedule here of how much tax you need to pay. Now remember, these will vary from country to country. If you earn less than 17,000, you pay no tax. That's for the year. Between 17,000 and 25,000, you pay a flat fee of 500 plus 5% of anything over 17,000, and so on. Then there is N.I.S. that you have to pay in most countries. And in this case, it is 2.5% of your salary and allowance, not COLA. And it is not to exceed $150. And so you get all the deductions. And when you finish with that, you subtract the deductions from your gross salary up here. And this will be your net salary or the check that you will receive. Part of all of that salary may be paid into a bank account. So let's look at example 1. Sally Richards just begins working with X P.A.Y.E company calculate her monthly pay check. All right. So if she just started, her basic salary is 65% of the maximum. So her salary will be 65% of the maximum. She's year one. So we will find 65% of this and put that down here, which is $1,625. She gets an allowance of 25% of that salary, not the maximum. So 25% of that is $406.25. And she also gets an allowance, cost of living allowance of 9% of this salary here, which gives us that. You add those three things up, and her gross salary is $2,177.50. If we multiply that by 12, we will get her annual salary, and we need that to calculate this P.A.Y.E. So 26,000, where does that fall in the schedule? Here. 26,000 here, just over 25,000. So she pays a flat fee of $1,500 plus 5% of anything over 25. So let's look at the formula to do that. A flat fee of $1,500 plus 15% of anything over 25,000. So you subtract 25,000 from 26,130, find 15% of that. But remember, that will be for 12 months. So we will divide by 12 and get our monthly tax, which is $139.13. Then her N.I.S. is 2.5% of her salary and allowance. It will be 2.5% of those two, and that will be $50.78. Any authorized bank payments? No. So her total deductions will be this amount. So this goes for N.I.S., that goes for tax. Those two will be deducted from this. And so her net salary is $1,787.59. So that will be her monthly paycheck. Now, let's deal with Mr. Roy Williams. This is his 5th year working with this same company. He has an authorized bank deduction of $670 per month. Calculate his monthly paycheck. Okay. So now notice up here, I have year 5, 65% plus 12%. And you may be wondering, okay, year 5 at 3% increment, that should be 15%. Actually, this is his 5th year. Think of it this way. Year 1, he started at 65%. Year 2, he has one increment of 3%, which would be 68%. Year 3, another increment, which takes him to 71%. Year 4, another increment, which takes him to 74%. And year 5, another increment, which takes him to 77%. Notice that amounts to 4 increments, not 5. These 4 increments here. So 4 times 3 would give us 12. That's where this 12 comes from. So 65 plus 12 would be 77%. So now his salary here, basic salary, will be 77% of that So we multiply that and we get $1,929. That's his basic salary. He also gets an allowance of 25% of that basic salary. So we find 25% of that, write it down here. He also gets cost of living allowance of 9% of the salary. That's 9% of that. And write that down here. So his total gross salary for the month is this, $2,579.50. Now we multiply that by 12 because we want to find out his annual income to be able to calculate his tax. So if we multiply that by 12, we get $30,954. Let's see where that takes us. Category 3. And for that, it's 15,000 plus 15% of anything over 25,000. So 15,000 plus 15% of anything over 25,000. So we subtract the 25,000 from his projected annual income. And then we work that out, and that is for the year. We divide it by 12. That is why it's called pay as you earn. You don't wait until the end of the year to find all that money to pay. So you pay it by month. Then N.I.S, which is 2.5% of salary and allowance. So it will be 2.5% of those two up there, which gives us $60.16. And he has an authorized bank deduction of $670. Add these three together, and the company will deduct that money from his earnings and pay him a check of $1,649.92. Now I have this here as net salary. Actually, that's not his net salary. That is the pay check that he actually got. But remember, this bank deduction is part of his salary that he actually got, except it was sent to the bank. Let's look at example 3, still on salary. Now, this is the 15th year that Mrs. Ryan Harvey has been working with this company. She has authorized bank deduction of $1,270 per month. Calculate her monthly paycheck. All right, now you will notice at the top here, I have 65% plus 42, because if it's her 15th year, then she would have had increment for 14 years. Multiply that by 3, you get 42%, except you can't get more than 100%. So that she gets the full basic salary, which is $2,500. She can't get more than 100%. So be careful with that. Her allowance is 25% of this. And COLA, cost of living allowance, is 9% of that, $225. So her gross salary is $3,350 per month. Now we need to find out how much tax she has to pay, but to do that, we need to find her annual salary. So we will multiply that by 12, and her annual salary is $40,200. So when we come to the government income tax schedule down here, we find that that is over 33,000. So she is in the highest tax bracket here. So she would have to pay a flat charge of $2,500 plus 25% of whatever she earns over 33,000. So that's 2,500 plus 25% of whatever she earns over 33,000. For the year, we divide it by 12 and find out how much tax she has to pay per month, which is $358.33. Or NIS, by now you know how to calculate that, is 2.5% of her basic salary and allowance. If you find 2.5% of this up here, those two, $78.13. By the way, if when we had calculated that, it had worked out to be, let's say, $190, that person will not pay $190, the person will pay $150, as that is the maximum that can be taken out for NIS by law in this particular country. Bank of Baroda, in that account, $1,270. So all her deductions come up to this. Subtract the deduction from her earnings, and she gets a check of $1,643.54. I know I have this here as net salary, which is not quite correct because this bank deduction here is part of her net salary. This is just a check that she is given. Now, wage, we have one example we will look at and finish. Calculate the fortnightly wage of Karen Bailey, who works at a department store. She is paid $9 per hour for a 40-hour work week. For any overtime, she is paid time and a half. She is paid fortnightly. In the last fortnight, Karen worked 98 hours. Her NIS contribution is 3% of wages earned. P.A.Y.E, that's the tax, is deducted on all wages according to this government schedule. Her earnings, she was required to work 40 hours a week. So that will be 80 hours for the fortnight at a rate of $9. So that's $720. But she worked some overtime. She worked 98 hours. So she worked 18 hours overtime. She is getting time and a half, which means 1.5 times this hourly rate. $13.50 multiplied by 18. She gets that for overtime work. So her gross earnings per fortnight is $963 per fortnight. Now her annual wage, and you need to be careful with this because you may be tempted to multiply that by 12. But I keep saying per fortnight. So we have to multiply that by 26 because there are 26 fortnights or 2-week periods in a year. So you multiply that by 26 and she actually earns $25,038 per year. Now, this will not be constant because you see, this overtime hours here may change. So she may work more or less. However, that can be rectified at the end of the year. So, for now, we will assume that if things continue as they are going, this is her annual wage based on that 25,000. So this category 3 here, 25,000. So it will be 500 plus 5% of anything over 22,000. So you subtract 22,000 from our anticipated annual wage. Find 5% of that, add that to 500, and then divide by 26. Remember, this is not monthly. This is fortnightly, every 2 weeks. So she pays $25.07 for tax every 2 weeks. which, as I said, may change depending on the overtime worked. Then our NIS is 3% of salary and allowance. In this case, there is no allowance. There's just hours worked and overtime. So she would pay 3% of that, which is $28.89. So her total deductions is $53.96. So we will subtract the total deductions from the total earnings, and that amounts to $909.04. That is what she will be paid, or net wage, for the 2 weeks. And we are back to this slide. Solve problems involving utilities and salaries and wages. In the next slide, we will deal with two others, and then the final slide with the remaining two. So we did this: utilities, salaries, and wages. And that brings us to the end of this video, which is video 10, which is based on objective 10 in section 2 of the syllabus.